Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 46 and issue number 47 of X-Force, written by Benjamin Percy. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So with that said, this issue opens up with Colossus helping his brother Mikhail as he lay bleeding on the ground. But despite Mikhail's injuries, he still believed he had the opportunity to claim control over the remains of mutant kind. Because according to Mikhail, with the help of his brother, he could still pull it off. Especially because Xavier is gone and all other mutants are either dead or exiled due to their failed leadership and lazy optimism. And if Mikhail was being honest, he believed Beast was the only one among them who had any sense. But see, Mikhail didn't calculate the way his brother Colossus would respond once he found out he was being used. Because, according to Mikhail, if he had let Colossus in on the plan, then Charles Xavier would have known, Emma Frost would have known, and Kid Omega would have known. And that was something Mikhail couldn't risk happening. So in his words, Mikhail stated this was the only way he could work with him. So with Mikhail's explanation out there, almost immediately, Colossus took his metallic form and went to attack, and in a blink of an eye, Colossus' hands were around his brother's throat. But due to his overwhelming guilt, Colossus decided to let him go, because he believed he hurt too many people already and he didn't want to add his brother to the list. So with Colossus turning his back, Mikhail seized the opportunity and went on the offense. Because from his perspective, Colossus was always the weak one, and considering the fact he was able to break him once, he thought he'd be able to break him again. So as the two brothers started to fight, we transitioned over to the rest of the pocket dimensions collapsing. And while that is happening, we see Domino and Sage talking with Doctor Strange, because Steven was able to open a temporary door to the dimensional rift. But before they entered, Strange lets them know that his gate is extremely dangerous and could collapse at any time. Now as for the reason of its volatility, the reason why it isn't stable is because of the two brothers' battle, which means the two mutants will have to get in and get out swiftly in order to be safe. So with that said, upon arriving, the very first person Sage runs into is Omega Red being tortured. So with seconds to react, Sage took hold of a scalpel and proceeded to take out both of Mikhail's soldiers. So with the current threat neutralized, Sage went on to apologize for her lateness and ask if Omega was okay. In which he replies by saying, he will be, once he can repay them in pain and blood. So with Omega back on his feet, we jump over to Domino landing near X-22, and as you may have guessed, those two begin to cut and blast their way through whoever was unlucky to have crossed their path. So as the two fought their way through the endless waves of enemies, Wolverine asked how long she had been held captive there, in which Domino replies by saying, several months. So with Laura caught up to speed, the bodies that littered the ground started to erupt and spring forth smaller versions of themselves. So with round 2 kicking off, we jump back over to the main card, the battle between Mikhail and Colossus. So with the battle heating up, Mikhail let Colossus know that he was the one who had his future truly stolen from him, while Colossus was the one who was adored and heralded. But according to Mikhail, that was all about to change as he manifested a gigantic boulder and sent it crashing down upon him. So with Colossus pinned to the ground, we jump over to the chronicler hard at work writing his next script. For the ORCHIS agent that was once under his control was now standing inches from him with a gun to his head. And lucky for the chronicler, once she pulled the trigger, by the grace of God, he managed to write how she missed her target. So with the chronicler once again in control, the ORCHIS soldier asked how the heck do they suppose to escape? In which the chronicler replies by saying, that may not matter. Because the whole structure of this dimension is currently collapsing, which means that Mikhail must be dead or dying. So with that said, luck was on their side, because as they fell into the void they managed to land right before Kid Omega. Now, Kid Omega was completely confused, because he wasn't sure if they were the rescue party, or if they needed rescuing themselves. But see, none of that mattered, because once again the ground collapsed beneath them as well, leaving all three in a free fall. So with Kid Omega, the chronicler, and the ORCHIS soldier falling into the darkness, we jump back over to Domino and Wolverine cutting down the nesting dolls as one of them manages to jump into our hero's mouth. So as Domino began to choke, Deadpool arrived out of nowhere and opened fire on the little soldiers, and in a hail of bullets, he was able to take out a large portion of them, and in an epic conclusion, he ended his assault with a few grenades. So with the area somewhat secure, Deadpool used the Heimlich maneuver to eject the nesting dolls from her throat. So with reinforcements helping Wolverine and Domino, we jump back over to Mikhail and Colossus's battle. And by the looks of it, it seems as if Mikhail has won, so with Colossus's metal skin disappearing, he pleads for Mikhail to stop. But with victory fading, Colossus fought with all his might against what he must do, all the way until the very last minute, where Colossus drove his hand into his brother's chest, and in a bloody fashion, he removed Mikhail's heart and left the body to fall to the ground. So with Mikhail dead and gone, the pocket dimensions began to collapse at a rapid rate, which forced Doctor Strange to rip out all who survived, which included the Chronicler and the Orchis soldier. So with the door closed, and everyone scattered across the ground, Domino quickly returned to her feet and trained her weapon directly on Colossus. So with Domino pretty close on pulling the trigger, Colossus lets her know that he completely understands. So with that said, he ends it off by saying with X-Force back and safe, their first mission is to decide what to do with him moving forward. So with issue number 46 coming to an end, we immediately transfer over to issue number 47. So with that said, this issue picks up with Wolverine on the run, because since the HELLFIRE Gala, Wolverine has been trying to fight ORCHIS from the shadows alongside several different heroes. But unfortunately, nothing seemed to work, and in his eyes, this truly felt like the end of the line. So with all the mutants dead or exiled, Logan was inches away from joining them, until out in the sky, arrived a Krakoan airship piloted by Sage. So with that said, we fast forward to a North Pole with the X-Force or some version of it that had endured. Because if Krakoa was the dream, then the X-Force was the guard dogs at the door that allowed such peaceful sleep. Now in these current days, those of them who were left are just trying to survive the nightmare the best way they could. And coincidentally enough, after a few scans, Sage found a place where they could do just that. A hidden location based on perilous low temperatures, magnetic confusion, far distance from civilization, and a strategically rugged perimeter. So with an outpost location discovered, it was up to Black Tom Cassidy to bring in their habitat so they could seek refuge. So with the base up and running, Wolverine turned to Kid Omega and asked him if he had continued to scan as he asked. Now the two reasons for this were, A, they needed to know how many mutants were still out there and B, he wanted the surviving mutants to have access to a telepathic beacon to help them find a safe haven. But C, the only problem with this plan was since issue 42 of X-Force, Kid Omega's powers had been acting up. Now, when it comes to the new greenhouse, Black Tom had modified the Krakoan flora of the mobile base to create something more permanently rooted. By turning it into a greenhouse, Black Tom was able to make it sustain life and keep people alive in a cold climate with relative ease. So with that established, the team made their way inside, with the exception of Kid Omega. For something was interfering with his abilities. So as soon as Logan went to retrieve him, a vision of Phoebe appeared before Quentin, and in a burst of energy, the kid passed out and ended up in the medical bay. So as Black Thomas and Wolverine look on with concern, Quentin lay unconscious, reliving all the events that took place during the HELLFIRE Gala. Now, while all that is going on, we fast forwarded a bit later in the control room, and when we get there, we see Sage decrypting all the data from Beast's mobile base. And while she's doing that, she explains how this could take several months to complete. So, in the meantime, she asks Black Tom, how is his security perimeter going? In which he responds by saying, he has several vines, expanding outwards a few kilometers. And strangely enough, they are already registering movements. Now, at this moment he has no idea who is coming, all he knows is it is more than just one person by foot. Which means, it could be anything ranging from nomads to Orchis military. So with no time to waste, Wolverine and Domino were dispatched to deal with the incoming threat, but to their surprise the new arrivals were the surviving members of Alpha Flight, Draken, Northstar, and Aura. So with their ranks growing, Wolverine and Domino quickly welcomed them inside and out of the cold. Now, following that, we jump back over to the greenhouse with Colossus sitting down, planting flowers when Domino approached him to have a conversation. Because despite Colossus breaking free, the team still hasn't decided what they're planning to do with him. Because up to this point, for the last several years, Colossus's mind was being manipulated by his brother, Mikhail. And given all the sensitive data he still has stored in his mind, due to his position on the council, the team has a complicated decision to make. So with that dynamic playing out, we jump back over to the medical center, where Quentin frantically wakes up and rushes out of the room, and within seconds, our hero was airborne. Now with Quentin gone, Omega Red immediately reported into Sage, who in return contacted our runaway Omega. And when she gets a hold of Quentin, she immediately let him know that it was pretty dangerous for him to just fly off the way he did. Because if he were to get picked up by any radars or satellite feeds, he can compromise their entire operation. And which Kid responds by saying, "Relax," because she is talking to an Omega. And just to make sure nothing went wrong, Quentin sent out temporary jammy signals so he wouldn't appear on any of their systems. Because for the first time in a long time, Quentin was finally firing on all cylinders as Kid Omega. So with Quentin finally at full strength, he made his way straight to the site of the Hellfire Gala, where he continued to relive the attack as he chanted over and over again, "I'm the Omega." So with everything continuing to play out, Quentin gets a pinpoint location on his target, and with little to no effort, he proceeds to toss the rubble to the side only to relieve his love, Phoebe. Now luckily for her, much like her mother, Emma, Phoebe has the ability to take the diamond form. The same form that pretty much makes her indestructible. So as he lands and picks her up, out of nowhere a sentinel arrives on the scene ready to do some damage. So, as the fight begins to kick off, we've jumped back to the greenhouse with Wolverine walking beside his son, Dakin. And while they walk, Dakin asks his father, "Aren't you going to say something like, 'I'm glad you're okay'?" In which Wolverine tells him, "I'm a little distracted right now," and a part of him always knew Dakin would be okay to begin with. So with the air cleared between the father and son, Dakin then goes on to ask Wolverine, what is he planning on doing with all these new refugees that just arrived at the greenhouse? In which Logan responds by saying protect them. So just as Logan was about to gather some information about the new arrivals, Colossus walked out of the greenhouse in an attempt to disclose some information about Sabretooth, but before he could say anything more, Quentin came crashing into the ground with Phoebe in hand. Now once he returns to his feet, Quentin goes on to talk about how it is not safe out there. In which Logan replies by saying it ain't, but that is why they got each other. So just as the team embraced one another in a group hug, out in the distance, Beast sat patiently waiting to put their bond to the test. So with that said, this issue of X-Force comes to an end. So with this issue coming to an end, I wonder if the following issues going to tie into the Sabretooth Wars, considering Beast is about to re-enter the battle. Because at the time of me creating this video, I just finished reading part 1 of the Sabretooth War, and by the way it kicked off, X-Force Comics should have no choice but to address it as it goes on. And let me just say, Sabretooth is a complete dog in that story and manages to pull off things that I thought wouldn't be possible for him to accomplish, but I'll address that in its own video. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.